The story which it is based on has been fundamentally changed. And so creating policy on a work of fiction rather than on reality is the real issue.
It's not just the ignorance and the sort of blithe arrogance that's offensive. It's the reveling in it. It's the somehow being proud of being an absolute wombat.
Okay, I'm now completely convinced. There is a psyop at play without any doubt. You know, I've been onto this regarding Netflix and Adolescence for a number of weeks now. This is the drama where you have a young 15-year-old working class kid from Liverpool who becomes a terrible murderer. And actually, the story was based on a real-life murderer, but that murderer was a black kid in Croydon, South London, who stabbed a young girl to death over a teddy bear. But of course, the ethnicity was changed. Now, part of this psyop is the media saying, oh, no, that never happened. Well, it did. I've read the quote from the creator proving that it did. Colin Brazier, great man, he's onto this. He wrote, there's a whiff of Salem in the air, last detected when anyone who declined to take the knee was instantly categorized as morally subnormal. I remember that because I refused to take the knee. I refused to post the black square on my Instagram account. I also compare it to the same sort of psyop that was going on around the NHS and going out with your pots and pans, what was it, on a Thursday night in the middle of what was a ridiculous lockdown. But I want to show you the MSM in action over this, and the worst offenders have been LBC, the Labour Broadcasting Company, which decided the biggest story in Britain this week was the fact that the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, had declined to watch a fictional television show. Reaction from Connor Tomlinson and Catherine Blakelock in just one moment, but first have a look.
You were in any way concerned with public conversation, if you were in any way invested in the national conversation, right, or public discourse, if you were in any way connected to it, invested in it, dependent upon it for your livelihood, like I am and like Nick is and Sheila, the idea that you would have swerved this program is unthinkable.
I pay attention, but I'm not going to watch every single thing that everybody's watching on Netflix. I do know what they're watching, and I know what it's about, and I've given a view that it is a work of fiction that is interesting, that touches on a problem in society, but there are bigger problems, such as Islamic terrorism and that kind of radicalization. And the story which it is based on has been fundamentally changed. And so creating policy on a work of fiction rather than on reality is the real issue.
It's not just the ignorance and the sort of blithe arrogance that's offensive. It's the reveling in it. It's the somehow being proud of being an absolute wombat, isn't it? I think, and I think the claim that the story it's based on has been changed is a racist lie that has been perpetrated by the sort of terminally online far right. So,
oh my goodness, the creator literally said it. That guy is so infuriating. But GB News has been on this too with Kemi Badenoch.
Have you watched Adolescence yet? The PM had a meeting yesterday around this Netflix show. Do you think white boys are being wrongly singled out here?
Well, I think Adolescence is a fictional story. It's based on a real story, but my understanding is that the boy who committed that crime was not white. So people can do whatever they like in fiction. The Prime Minister should not be building policy on fiction. He should be building policy on reality. What is the reality? The phones are disrupting schools, and not enough schools have effective bans. When I asked him last week about having a ban at PMQs, what did he say? That it wasn't necessary. He believes it's a gimmick. So he's not doing the things that we need to do in reality. He's watching Netflix and having roundtables about a Netflix documentary. It's a gimmick. He thinks that he's going to touch the people of this country. Oh, they're all watching Netflix, so I'll just talk about the thing they're watching on TV. No, he needs to talk about what's happening in their lives right now. That's the bills that are going up, the jobs tax that's going to kill jobs, lower wages, and let's get phones out of schools as well, because it's distracting our young people.
Do white boys get a real deal in this country?
I don't think that we should start splitting people according to ethnicity in that way. When I was a minister, I put out a report that showed that white working class boys not white boys, white working class boys were the most disadvantaged. And I fought for them. Dawn Butler was calling me the white face, the black face of white supremacy, all sorts of nonsense, because I was talking about common sense. No one has done more than me in order to highlight the truth and get us to start treating everyone in this country the same, irrespective of what color their skin is. We've got to move away from all these characteristics that are dividing us and start talking about the thing that we all share, which is being British.
But even Nick Ferrari, who I think has now just been drinking the LBC Kool-Aid, was totally going along with that narrative. But first, you know how often I talk about the need for free speech to be protected. Well, I've been increasingly thinking of the need for personal protection from snoopers, bad actors, and hackers online. And I'm delighted to tell you, I've now found the fail-safe solution. But what's more, this VPN, or virtual private network, to use the full term, the sort of jingo, is also a life changer when it comes to providing you entertainment and information from anywhere in the world, wherever you are. So let me introduce you to Surfshark. This is an incredible and easy to use service that I use every day to encrypt my internet traffic, which means my online activities stay safe. So you can shop, you can stream, you can browse, you can conduct your banking online in complete privacy. But the benefits of Surfshark go way beyond keeping you safe online. This is what I really love. You can access your favorite entertainment and news shows and channels from streaming services like Hulu, iPlayer, HBO Max, Peacock, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, wherever you want, as if you're watching in another country. And you can do so within seconds. Really handy, by the way, if you're traveling for work or on holiday, because you can get all your favorite content from home, including sports, without having to deal with any sort of geo-blocking, which can be so annoying. This is an insurance policy too against creeping censorship in so many countries that we talk about on this show all the time. But just one example, France has blocked Rumble. You can't watch Outspoken on Rumble if you're in France. Well, you can if you have Surfshark. A VPN can also save you money too, because you can get the best deals from websites that change their prices depending on where you're buying from. Loads of other benefits too. Surfshark can be used on unlimited devices, meaning your entire household can stay safe with just one subscription. They have over 3,200 servers in over 100 countries with a world of choice at your fingertips. By the way, don't worry if this is your first time using a VPN. It's super easy, really, really easy. But if you do have any issues, there is 24/7 customer service. So go to surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. You can just click on the link in the description box below. What's more, Surfshark's so confident it's the best VPN in the world that you can try it. This is amazing. For a full 30 days, if you're not entirely satisfied, you will get your money back. So surfshark.com/outspoken for an extra 4 months of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. But now, back to the show.
What have you learnt from watching Adolescence? It is now setting in part the political conversation. It's the #1 show here and in the US. It's the highest watched Netflix offering of all time. Forget about Baby Reindeer. Now, tell me I'm being a journalist here. You are a journalist here. Thank you. I feel she should have, even if she'd said, well, you know what? When I heard the Prime Minister talk about it, I'm afraid I only got through the first hour last night, but don't spoil it, Nick. I'm going to watch the rest of it on the weekend. When I asked Kemi Badenoch, what have you learnt from that hit show? A leading politician such as yourself, not to be in tune with what a lot of people are talking about. That's almost a dereliction of duty, some would suggest. And not least as you have a child approaching their teens.
Yes, I do. So I pay attention, but I'm not going to watch every single thing that everybody's watching on Netflix. I do know what they're watching, and I know what it's about. And I've given a view that it is a work of fiction that is interesting, that touches on a problem in society. But there are bigger problems, such as Islamic terrorism and that kind of radicalization. And the story which it is based on has been fundamentally changed. And so creating policy on a work of fiction rather than on reality is the real issue.
Does it matter that the leader of the opposition, not least as the Prime Minister talked about how he'd watched it with his teenage children, just to keep you informed, Mrs. Badenoch's children are a little bit younger. She has her eldest child will be approaching their teens fairly shortly, so she has no children in that age bracket yet. Both of the Prime Minister's children are in it, and he talked about it. Does it matter that she's not watched it?
No, it doesn't. You have all gone completely mad because you're the one saying that this is a work of fiction. So if it is a work of fiction, she absolutely doesn't need to watch it. It is a drama. The reality is, though, the psyop going on is because indeed the story was based on this guy, Hassan Sentamu, who was the teenager jailed for life for the murder of Elian Andam. And the thing is, Connor Tomlinson, the quotes exist where the creator spoke about that murder.
Yeah, I thought Kimmy Badenoch's answer, and I'm not usually a supporter of hers, but to the question, why haven't you watched the latest fad on Netflix, which is being used as a pretext to censor anyone and everyone online? Why haven't you watched that? That was excellent. It's essentially, yeah, this has been entirely invented as a moral panic by the state, by MPs talking about it, by them seizing upon a fictional example that has been recast to be appropriate, the respective races of the perpetrator recast to be appropriate for the state's multicultural narrative. Yeah, none of this is particularly relevant when we're having problems like Islamic radicalization, which prevent the body that is charged with monitoring anti-extremism has completely dropped the ball on, mainly because it's got a lobby of 700 Islamic activists working at the Home Office. And she's right to say, as a UDAN, this isn't representative of reality, because in 2023, there was some polling by the ISD that found that 1 in 5 young people between the ages of 16 to 24 had a positive view of Tate. Now, this is concentrated among young men, but it's more concentrated among racial lines. So it's 41% of Black respondents, 31% of Asian respondents, and that's not broken down by Chinese versus second generation Pakistani, and only 15% of white kids. And it's because Andrew Tate does not really have a culture that jibes with the sensitivities of young Englishmen, but the kind of status displays and the polygamous mating habits that he has, and his running a porn empire, certainly jibe with things like rap culture, which has been imported over from the US to the UK. With young drill rappers. Yes, and also what's even more pronounced is that Adolescence doesn't depict the kind of perpetrator's family life that leads to these killings. I mean, the guy who actually did it in Croydon was sent to a Ugandan boarding school and physically abused, and his home was quite tumultuous. 46% of kids reach 14 in this country and don't live with their dad. Broken down by ethnicity, that's 57% of Black Caribbean, 44% of Black African, and only 22% of white British. So you're more likely to join a gang, you're more likely to commit knife crime, you're more likely to kill a female classmate in this country if you're a young Black boy. That is a fact, and that is a fact that conveniently adolescence and the political circus around it has skated over in order to use Andrew Tate as a kind of boogeyman to justify online censorship. I'm not a fan of him, but I'm also not caught up in this moral panic.
And you know what really infuriates me? That now, if you actually try and say that it was based on fact or based on something that actually happened, you're just totally bombarded online by article after article from the MSM, boosted, of course, by big tech, saying, oh, no, there was no race swapping. This isn't made up. It was Stephen Graham himself in the Radio Times, like a magazine in the UK, who said, Catherine Blakelock, then there was another young girl in South London who was stabbed to death at a bus stop, citing the tragic death of Elian Andam, who was killed by Hassan Sentamu after she got off the bus outside the Whitgift Centre on her way to Old Palace of John Whitgift School in Croydon on September the 27th, 2023. So this big conspiracy theory, Catherine Blakelock, that apparently people like me are just making up, was based on words from the actual creator, Stephen Graham. That's why I believe there is a psyop going on around this show, because they're trying to make us forget that it was Stephen Graham who admitted that it was based on this black killer.
You know, I don't think this stuff makes any difference anymore, because people have eyes, people go to London parks, they go to streets, they see rubbish all over the country, they see things happening. And the more they do this, the less they believe a single thing that comes out of Netflix with its Snow White or its other films. They don't believe newspapers. They don't watch the BBC. The people who believe this stuff already are left-wing. They're left-wing socialist champagne socialists, generally living in very nice areas, who are not exposed to knife crime, rubbish, violence, harassment, and it washes over them. And it's the same with the id, with the king, the civil service, the Home Office, and Keir Starmer wishing everybody a happy end of Ramadan rather than wishing them a happy Mothering Sunday. People just think the country has gone bonkers, and this is the problem. Going back to reform are in that space to talk about these things, to be an absolute free speech party, to have some people talking, agreeing, and some people not agreeing, and being an open space, and they are catastrophically failed in that. And I want to just make one other point. I know I'm moving it back, but I would never be selected for reform. I mean, and Nigel chose me, but I just want to go back to this point about the Conservatives. Have you ever looked, Dan, at what colour their logo is? Have you looked at it? Light blue. Well, it wasn't light blue when I did it.
What colour was it?
Well, it was black and white when it was originally formatted. And it was given a light blue logo, and I think this is incredibly symbolic. It tells you everything you need to know. Look at it, and you know what you're getting. You're getting a worse, weaker Conservative Party with no depth.
Catherine Blake Clark, it has been fascinating to have you today. Connor, founder of the Brexit Party. Connor Tomlinson, senior contributor to Courage Media, co-host of the Deprogrammed podcast at the New Culture Forum. You know I always love having you too. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.